I thought the worst thing that could happen on my 30th birthday was my husband leaving me for my best friend. I was wrong. The real betrayal was far more sinister. The fairy lights I'd spent all afternoon stringing up in the garden twinkled like fallen stars. Inside, the low hum of conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses filled our home with a warmth that felt like a hug. It was my 30th birthday, the one I'd been dreaming of, and everything was perfect. I was wearing a slinky emerald green dress that my husband Mark had bought me, and every time I caught my reflection, I felt like the star of my own movie. Mark himself was the perfect leading man, charming, attentive, moving through the crowd of our closest friends and family with an easy grace that made my heart swell. He'd kiss my temple every time he passed, whispering how beautiful I looked, how this was my night. For 10 years, Mark had been my entire world. We met in college, two ambitious kids with big dreams, and we'd built a beautiful life together. He was a successful financial advisor. I was a graphic designer with a flourishing freelance business. We had the house, the dog, the 2-week vacations in Italy. On the surface, and even deep down, I believed we were unbreakably, incandescently happy. After we cut the cake, a decadent 3-tiered chocolate masterpiece, Mark tapped his glass with a fork. A hush fell over the party. He stood in the center of the living room, his handsome face illuminated by the soft light, a confident smile playing on his lips. My own smile was so wide my cheeks were starting to ache. "If I could have everyone's attention," he began, his voice smooth and steady. He raised his glass to me. "I want to propose a toast to my amazing wife, Clara, 30 years old today, and somehow more beautiful than the day I first met her." A collective awe rippled through the room. I felt a blush creep up my neck, my eyes locked on his. "Clara is my rock," he continued, his gaze intense. "She's the one who believed in me when I had nothing but a worn-out suit and a head full of crazy ideas. Everything we have, this home, this life, it's all built on the foundation of her love and support. And for that, I will be eternally grateful." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. This was more than I could have hoped for. My best friend Chloe, who was standing beside me, gave my arm a squeeze. Mark took a deep breath, and his smile tightened just a fraction. "And because she is my rock, because she's the strongest person I know she'll understand what I have to say next. Honesty has always been the most important thing in our relationship, and I need to be honest now." A confused murmur went through the crowd. I frowned slightly, my perfect movie night suddenly having a strange shift in tone. Chloe's hand slipped from my arm. "This past year," Mark said, his voice dropping a little, "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching about what I want, about who I am, and I've realized that a chapter of my life is coming to an end." The air in the room went from warm and celebratory to ice-cold and still. My heart started a frantic, painful thudding against my ribs. This wasn't happening. This was some kind of joke, a horribly misjudged, cruel joke. He looked directly at me, his eyes no longer warm but filled with a detached, almost clinical pity. "Clara, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving you." A single sharp gasp cut through the silence. It might have been my own. The champagne glass in my hand felt impossibly heavy. The room started to spin, the fairy lights blurring into streaks of cruel, mocking light. My friends' faces were a sea of horror and disbelief, but he wasn't finished. Oh no, the surprise wasn't just that he was ending our marriage in front of 50 of our nearest and dearest on my milestone birthday. He had one more little gift for me. "It's not fair to either of us to continue living a lie," he declared, his voice regaining its strength as if he was proud of this public execution. "My heart belongs to someone else. I've fallen in love." He then did the single most devastating thing I could ever imagine. He turned his head slightly and his gaze softened as he looked towards the edge of the crowd. He looked right at my best friend. "I'm in love with Chloe." every head in the room swiveled. There she was, Chloe, my maid of honor, the woman who held my hair back in college and helped me pick out my wedding dress, standing pale and trembling, unable to meet my eyes. The toast was over. My life was over. The silence that followed was a living, breathing monster, suffocating me. People started shuffling awkwardly, whispering, not knowing what to do. My parents looked like they were about to commit murder. Mark and Chloe just stood there, a united front against the wreckage they'd created. He finally walked towards me, his face a mask of false sincerity. "Clara, I'm so sorry it had to be this way, but I had to tell everyone the truth. I hope you can—" He never finished the sentence. The shock that had frozen me in place finally cracked, and a rage so pure and cold it burned through my veins took its place. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply turned and walked away from him, through the stunned crowd that parted for me like the Red Sea, and went straight to his home office. I locked the door behind me, my breath coming in ragged sobs. My world was a pile of ash. He had taken everything and torched it with a smile. I sank into his expensive leather chair, the smell of his cologne still lingering in the air, and I felt a wave of despair so profound I thought I might drown in it. But then I saw it. In his haste to come play the executioner at my party, he'd left his laptop open. An email was on the screen, but it wasn't from Chloe. It was a transaction confirmation. A wire transfer for $50,000 sent just yesterday. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't to a joint account or to Chloe's account. It was to a name I had never seen before, Sabine Dubois. And beneath the name, in the memo line, were 3 chilling words that made the blood in my veins turn to ice. "For your silence. For your silence." The words burned themselves onto the back of my eyelids. Silence about what? The affair? No. $50,000 was a lot of money, even for Mark. This was bigger. This was dirtier. A cold clarity washed over me, pushing the shrieking grief into a locked room in my mind. The party, the humiliation. Chloe? It all suddenly felt like a sideshow, a diversionary tactic for a crime I hadn't even known was committed. My hands moved with a life of their own. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady as I snapped a crystal-clear photo of the screen. The transaction details, the name, the memo, evidence. I minimized the window, leaving his desktop exactly as I'd found it, and slipped out of the office, locking the door behind me. The scene in the living room was a train wreck in slow motion. People were grabbing their coats, avoiding my gaze, offering mumbled, pathetic condolences to my parents. My mother's face was a thundercloud. My father looked like he wanted to physically tear Mark apart. And there, by the front door, were the 2 of them, the happy couple. Mark was trying to look apologetic while Chloe was actively weeping, dabbing at her eyes with a cocktail napkin. She looked up and our eyes met across the room. I felt nothing. No spark of sisterhood, no pang of betrayal, just a void. I walked straight towards them. A path cleared for me once again. "Get out," I said, my voice quiet but carrying the chilling weight of a final judgment. It wasn't a scream, it was a command. "Clara, listen. We need to talk about this," Mark started, reaching for my arm. I recoiled as if his touch was acid. "There is nothing to talk about," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You have had your say. Now get out of my house." I turned my gaze to Chloe. "You too." Her sob hitched. "Clara, I'm so sorry. I never wanted—" "I believe the words you're looking for are 'get out,'" I repeated, the calm in my own voice scaring even me. They stood frozen for a moment, stunned by my lack of hysteria. Then, with a final, desperate look from Mark, they left. The door clicked shut behind them, and the silence they left in their wake was absolute. My friends and family began to surround me, but I held up a hand. "I need to be alone," I managed to say. "Please, just go. I'll call you tomorrow." Understanding, they filed out, leaving me and my parents in the wreckage of my 30th birthday. My mom hugged me tight, and for a second I almost let the facade crack. But I held on. I promised them I would be okay, that I was stronger than this. They left reluctantly, and I was finally utterly alone. The twinkling fairy lights seemed to mock me. I didn't take them down. I let them burn. I made a pot of coffee so strong it was almost sludge and sat down at my own computer, the photo from Mark's laptop glowing on my screen. Sabine Dubois. I started digging. A name that unique should be easy to find. Social media yielded a few possibilities, but nothing concrete. I dove into our shared cloud storage, a digital attic of our 10-year life together. I searched for her name in our financial records, in old trip itineraries, anywhere. Nothing. It was like she was a ghost. Then I had an idea. I didn't search for her name. I searched for the amount. $50,000. It was a long shot, but my gut was screaming at me. The search churned for a minute, and then a single file popped up. It was a scanned PDF in a deeply buried folder labeled Estate Planning. The file name was Harrison Final Disbursement. My blood ran cold. Mr. Harrison was one of Mark's first major clients, a sweet, wealthy old widower who had treated Mark like a son. He'd passed away 6 months ago. Mark had handled his entire estate. I opened the document. It was a ledger of payments made from the estate to various beneficiaries and creditors. And there it was, a line item for $50,000, marked for contingency legal fees. But the recipient wasn't a law firm. It was an individual account number, the same account number from the wire transfer on Mark's laptop. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I searched for Harrison Estate and Dubois. Bingo. An old email chain from 8 months ago. The sender was Sabine Dubois, Mr. Harrison's estranged daughter who lived in France. She was asking Mark, the estate executor, for a copy of her father's final will. Mark's reply was smooth, professional, and full of condolences. He'd attached the will. I downloaded the attachment, my heart hammering. But I knew Mark. He was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid enough to keep incriminating evidence in a place I could easily find. There had to be another version. I remembered him complaining about our shared drive being slow and that he was moving sensitive client files to a private server, a server he thought I didn't have the password for. But I knew every password he'd ever used. I tried his college nickname and our anniversary date. Access granted. Inside, I found a folder also labeled Harrison Final. But this one contained a different version of the will. I opened both documents side by side. They were nearly identical, except for one monumental detail. In the version he sent to Sabine, the bulk of Mr. Harrison's multi-million-dollar estate was left to various charities. In the version on his private server, the true version, nearly everything was left to his sole heir, his daughter, Sabine Dubois. The $50,000 payment wasn't for an affair. It was the price of her silence after he presented her with a forged will, cheating her out of her inheritance. He'd likely told her it was a token gesture from the estate, a final gift from her father. Mark hadn't just stolen from a dead man. He'd stolen a father's legacy from his grieving child. The man who lectured our friends about ethical investing was a common thief, a predator in a bespoke suit. And Chloe? She was just the cover story, the dramatic, messy affair to distract from the cold, calculated felony. A slow smile spread across my face. It felt alien and sharp. Mark thought he'd destroyed me in our living room tonight. He had no idea what real destruction looked like. He'd left his entire criminal enterprise on a server I had the key to. He thought he was playing checkers, making a bold move to get his queen. He had no idea I was playing chess. I looked at the calendar. Next week was the annual shareholders' gala for his firm, the biggest night of his professional year. He'd be on stage, giving a speech about integrity and trust. It was the perfect venue. The emerald dress lay discarded on the floor, a relic of a woman who no longer existed. In her place was a woman with a phone full of evidence, a direct line to Sabine Dubois in France, and a truly nasty surprise in the works. My birthday party was over, but I was already planning his. The week leading up to the gala was a masterclass in controlled chaos. I spent the first 48 hours on the phone with an international operator, tracking down Sabine Dubois. When I finally reached her, she was cautious, her English accented with a melodic French lilt. But when I told her I was Mark's wife and that I had a copy of her father's true last will and testament, her caution turned to a white-hot fury that mirrored my own. I emailed her the files, the real will, the forged one, the wire transfer confirmation. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. Then a single, shaky, merci. Sabine was on a plane to New York the next day. While she was in the air, I became a ghost. I packed a bag and checked into a boutique hotel across town, ignoring the hundreds of texts and calls from Mark, Chloe, and our bewildered friends. Let them think I was having a breakdown. Let them think I was shattered. The more broken he believed I was, the less he'd see me coming. I met with Sabine in a discreet coffee shop, two women from different worlds, united by one man's treachery. She was elegant, fierce, with her father's kind eyes. We laid out our plan, every detail precise, every contingency covered. She contacted her lawyers and I contacted my own. My focus was surgical. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was dripping with crystal and old money. I walked in, wearing a floor-length gown of black velvet, a stark contrast to the emerald green of my last party dress. My hair was swept up, my makeup was flawless, and on my lips was a shade of red, so deep it was almost blood. I saw him instantly. Mark was holding court near the stage, a flute of champagne in his hand, looking every bit the conquering hero. He was laughing, accepting congratulations from his colleagues and superiors. Chloe was not there. Of course she wasn't. She was the sordid affair, not the polished corporate wife he needed for an evening like this. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on me, he froze mid-laugh. The color drained from his face. He excused himself and made a beeline for me, his expression a mixture of panic and annoyance. "Clara, what are you doing here? I've been trying to call you for days." "I know," I said, my voice as cool and smooth as the silk of my dress. "I've been busy. You look well. I see committing grand larceny agrees with you." His eyes darted around nervously. "What are you talking about? Keep your voice down. You're making a scene." "Oh, Mark," I said, a genuine pitying smile gracing my lips. "We haven't gotten to the scene yet. This is just the overture." Just then, the CEO of his firm, a formidable man named Mr. Davenport, stepped onto the stage to begin the evening's presentations. He launched into a glowing introduction for the keynote speaker, the firm's brightest star, their beacon of integrity. He was talking, of course, about my husband. "Please join me in welcoming to the stage Mark Peterson." A thunderous applause erupted. Mark gave me one last desperate look before pasting on his public smile and striding toward the stage. He took the podium, looking out at the sea of adoring faces, the picture of success. He cleared his throat, ready to deliver his speech about ethics and client trust. And that's when the ballroom doors at the far end of the room swung open. Two uniformed NYPD officers walked in, followed by Sabine Dubois and her very expensive-looking lawyer. They stood there for a moment, letting the entire room take notice. The applause for Mark faltered and died. A confused murmur rippled through the black-tie crowd. Mark's confident posture crumbled. He stared at Sabine, then at the police officers, and finally, his wild, panicked eyes found mine in the crowd. I simply raised my champagne glass in a silent toast, the same gesture he had used to begin my public execution. This time, it was his. "Mark Peterson?" one of the officers called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous, silent room. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement." Gasps filled the ballroom. Phones came out recording the downfall of the firm's golden boy. Sabine stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. This man forged my father's will and stole my inheritance. Mr. Davenport looked like he had been struck by lightning. Mark stood at the podium, a statue of guilt, his face ashen. The officers walked calmly up the steps to the stage. They didn't need to struggle. He was already broken. They cuffed his hands behind his back, the metallic click a death knell for his career, his reputation, his entire life. As they led him off the stage, past his horrified colleagues and the flashing cameras of people's phones, he had to walk right past me. He stopped, his face a mask of disbelief and pure hatred. "You," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You did this." I took a delicate sip of my champagne. "You told me yourself, Mark," I said, my voice just for him. "Honesty is the most important thing. I just wanted everyone to know the truth. Happy birthday." He was led away, a disgraced man in a tuxedo, the whispers and stares of his peers following him out the door. The gala was in ruins, but I had never felt more put together. Sabine came to my side and squeezed my hand. We had won. The next day, the story was everywhere. Mark's firm fired him and issued a public statement. Chloe sent me a novel-length text message of apologies and explanations that I deleted without reading. My divorce was swift and uncontested. He had nothing left to fight with. I gave Sabine the house. It felt more like her inheritance than my home anyway, and she gave me a significant portion of the recovered estate as a thank you, which I used to start my own design agency. I didn't destroy Mark's life out of revenge. I did it because it was right. But I won't lie, watching him get everything he deserved, served on a silver platter in front of the very people he worked so hard to impress. It was a much, much better birthday surprise than the one he gave me.